quite a crowd and quite a show, I think, for you, so it's going to be great. I'm Angie Wong. I'm the Director of UX Instruction here at Prime, and to my left is Kyra Sheehan. She's our lead UX instructor. And we've had the pleasure of working with this cohort of 15 budding UXers for the last 17 and a half weeks. Right? Yeah, 17 weeks and 2 days. Nobody's counting, except all of you. So over those last 17 weeks and 2 days, this group of individuals have worked to understand what UX is, what user experience is. The first 6 weeks they spent working online at a kind of self-driven pace, working through understanding the vocabulary, some of the tools, the software, the process of solving today's technical problems and today's people problems, of which there are plenty. And then they came on site for 12 weeks, 11 weeks and 2 days, and worked through weekly case studies, approaching all client-based problems or client-source problems from our local community 1 week at a time. So they approach problems from a variety of different starting points, sometimes when the problem is not yet defined, sometimes the problem is really defined, and sometimes the solution already exists and it needs to be improved. So they work through a variety of case studies to understand how do you take action at any one of those different starting points. And as you can imagine, that can be a little bit of a challenge. They worked through that at a really rapid pace and did a great job. And now we are at the point of their final presentation. So the last in between that, they worked for 2 weeks on an individual project, so scoping a project, defining that project, determining what methods and tools they needed to use, so without sort of any assistance. They did a great job. And now they have been working in teams of 2 to 4 people with local organizations to tackle their problems, work collaboratively with them, and come up with solutions that are human-centered, sustainable, and amazing. So now today we're going to see 4 presentations. We've got 4 teams that are presenting that'll really showcase, again, that kind of breadth of problems that UXers tackle, from something very specific to something very broad. So we're excited to kick things off with Team CEI.
All right, hello, we are Team Center for Economic Inclusion. And this is Per Kwanbeck, Mara Peterson, Mary Mum, and I'm Leanna Stone. The Center for Economic Inclusion is a Minneapolis-St. Paul nonprofit organization that is working to make a more inclusive local economy. The Minneapolis-St. Paul region has made many lists throughout the years as being one of the best places to live in the nation. The problem, however, is that it is only a great place for some of us. In reality, it is one of the least racially inclusive places in the nation, ranking 2nd from the worst in unemployment, 8th from the worst in income, worst in poverty rates, and worst in homeownership rates. The Center for Economic Inclusion creates indicators for measuring a successfully inclusive economy. These indicators include employment, income, entrepreneurship, education, housing, and transportation. Investing in an inclusive economy not only would help those that have been left behind, but also add $32.1 billion to our local economy by the year 2040. Now, pass to talk a little bit more about the problem space.
Thank you, Leanna. So, CEI approached Prime with the intention to build a disaggregated data solution. Now, what does disaggregated mean? Simply put, it's to separate something down into its component parts. And what that allows us to do with data is it allows us to identify specific populations and how they're being affected within our economy. For example, the average unemployment rate in Minnesota last year was approximately 3%, but that doesn't tell the whole story. If we break that down by different populations of color, or disaggregate it by race, we can see a dramatically different story. With white people experiencing an unemployment rate well under 1%, and some populations of color seeing 10 times that. Utilizing this method, CEI wanted to use their indicators to identify key opportunities for the organization and the community to create a more inclusive economy. CEI also provided us with a couple primary users that they wanted to target for this platform. Policymakers, to help them create more informed decisions about the policies that they're putting into place to help grow this inclusive economy. As well as local business leaders, the main drive behind this economy, so that they could participate in more inclusive practices day to day. And last but not least, members of the media, to help promote this message and report on the issues of economic disparity within the Twin Cities. So after identifying our problem space and our users, we went out and talked to them. We asked them, how are you getting this data now? What tools are you using, and what are you finding difficult? We also ran them through some rigorous usability tests to identify platforms like Greater MSP and DataUSA.io. These other dashboards presented similar data, but we wanted to see what CEI could do to differentiate itself and make for a more meaningful experience. And what we found out was very interesting. Our users had a really hard time ascertaining what the actual meaning of the data was. So they would get these large data sets and they would feel overwhelmed, or that they didn't know what was going on. And even if they could figure it out, they didn't know what they were supposed to do. Where am I supposed to go next? And last, if they could even make an impact in this overwhelming problem. And so we built a web platform to tackle these specific user issues by providing meaningful context and explicit data relationships, not just explain how severe this issue is, but how it relates to real humans and make it more accessible to the general public. Second, we wanted to create concise, actionable steps to help achieve economic inclusion and give people a path forward so that they could help in creating this economy. And last but not least, we wanted to create accountability for the individuals who wish to join in this cause, and also for the impact that the Center for Economic Inclusion had on this issue. And to talk you through how we did that, I'm going to pass it off to Mary.
Thank you, Per. Our disaggregated data web platform doesn't just give numbers and stats and leaves it at that. It provides the primary users, which are policymakers and local business leaders, with data that is contextualized and framed in an easy-to-understand way. After this data is presented, they are given concrete, actual steps which they can take to make changes towards the mission, towards economic inclusion in the Twin Cities. When they get to the main page of the web platform, they see this section here called the Real Story. What this does is that it gives an overview of unemployment and average income for people of color and for the general population of the Twin Cities. When users in our research saw these stats and other dashboards, they said, I don't know what these numbers mean. I don't know if it's good or bad. I have nothing to compare it to. By showing these two numbers, they're able to see the contrast between the two. So the number for unemployment for people of color is 8%. They're able to see that that is double what it is for the general population of the Twin Cities. Also, what this does is that it may challenge misconceptions that users may have about economic prosperity in the region. So this may give them incentive to dig deeper into the platform in order to learn more. These bottom stats show how the local economy and how people of color could benefit if true economic inclusion is reached. This is meaningful to the users because they're able to see that this situation doesn't have to be this way and that it could be better. It motivates them to think of ways they can correct the disparities in the region. Here, the data for median wages is shown. Next to the graph, they're able to see a myth and reality section. The myth here states, wage gaps between races are present in Minnesota, but they're not as bad as they are in other states. The reality section says, Minnesota is home to the second worst economic disparity in the region. So this section continues to challenge misconceptions a user may have and states realities for people of color. Users in our research stated that they weren't given explicit takeaways from data. They were just shown numbers. So here it shows the most important takeaway that they see in the graphs to the right. If the users want to dig deeper into the platform and look at the evidence for the myth and reality section, they can click on these buttons here to see the data disaggregated by race, location, and history. The same format is applied to the unemployment section. And the what that means section takes the data and contextualizes it into the form of a person. In our research, users stated that they don't know what these numbers mean for people. They want to see the connection. So this takes the data and it puts it into the form of a person so that it makes it relatable to the user. They're able to empathize with the person because they're able to see how it affects their lives. The See the Full Impact section gives the user a good segue into exploring more data of the dashboard. So I'll hand it off to Mara to see what the user will see in the economic development page.
Thank you, Mary. One of the indicators for CEI that they were looking to represent for the user was economic development. Economic development here indicates sections of the Minnesota economy based on race. We created a for the user to identify the meaning behind the statistical data. The web platform identifies not only context and quality of the data, but most importantly, actionable steps to move forward. As we move down the platform, users are able to identify entrepreneurship based off race and location. The user is able to decipher the true meaning behind the myth and reality of the data, and which is important when understanding racial disparity. The platform allows the user to identify business creation based off race. In addition to entrepreneurship, there's also an indication of business growth and regional investment by race to be identified to the user. Through statistical data, the user is able to identify the myth and reality of the information being displayed, and most importantly, the true impact it's having on our community. Continuing down the platform, business leaders and policymakers are able to be provided with resources that they can implement both short and long term. For example, business leaders were looking for a way to improve economic inclusion, but we're curious about what other businesses were doing in the space. Now transparency for business leaders and policymakers are made evident to the user. A business leader or policymaker can identify the goals and then take that further action to join the pledge. Joining the pledge is very important. It's because most important, it's providing that unique way to take that action step toward achieving that goal towards economic inclusion in our own state. Once the user decides to pledge, they fill out the form. The form goes immediately to CEI. CEI reviews the form, accepts the pledge, and then most importantly after that, the user's information is then able to be displayed on the web platform itself. And that concludes the demo of our web platform. Overall, we are providing and understanding an easy way to provide the context to the users, in addition to understanding the real world data and taking those action steps for policy leaders and business leaders alike. And finally, providing the users a way to pledge and commit to inclusion. And now I will hand it off to Leanna to conclude our presentation.
Thank you, Mara. Like the Center for Economic Inclusion, we believe we don't have to be defined by the disparities in our community. We are, however, defined by what we choose to do with that information once it's been presented to us. I encourage you to go to the centerforeconomicinclusion.org to see the work they have already done on this very important issue. We'd like to take the time to thank the Center for Economic Inclusion, especially Kristen, Mary Kay, and John, for including us in this project. The center does such important work. We'd also like to thank Angie and Kyra for their guidance over these past 18 weeks. We'd also like to thank Atwood. We couldn't have asked for a better group of people to be with through this experience. And we'd like to thank the Prime community and the Prime staff, as well as all of our guests here today for taking the time to learn about this important issue. I encourage you to reach out if you have any questions for us. Again, we are Para Kwanbeck, Mara Peterson, Mary Mum, and I'm Leanna Stone. Thank you.
Great job, Team CEI. You're going to see a very clear thread throughout that project and the next one. Clearly, we live in a world where we have access to a lot of data, and mo data, mo problems, as I like to say, which is great. It's keeping us in business. So understanding what to do with that data is part of the challenge of a user experience designer. You can see that user experience pulls from a lot of other disciplines. It's a pretty interdisciplinary degree or career path. So it pulls from human psychology, sociology, anthropology, understanding human behavior, human interactions, and then translating what we know about human interactions and what's good about them to human to digital interactions, and improving those experiences, making them more human. You heard a thread of empathy, understanding what people really need and trying to embed that into the experience is core to our practice. So the previous team talked about data and how to make it actionable for business owners, and you're going to see a very similar sort of problem space presented to you by Team Marnita's Table. So give it up for them.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nak. This is Ellen Lucas, Kate Jenny, and Roxy Clem, and we are Team Marnita's Table. Marnita, our client, often grew up feeling like an outsider. Most people around her didn't look like her or share the same background. She made it her mission to always welcome people and never make them feel unwelcomed. Marnita began dinners in her own home, welcoming everyone such as immigrants, people of color, and LGBTIQ members to get to know everyone and share their stories. In 2005, Marnita's Table was born, a nonprofit dedicated to increase cultural knowledge and community engagement. These dinners turned to intentional social interactions, known as IZZIs. They bring diverse groups of individuals together over a feast of food, meeting all dietary needs for free. During hard times, especially these days, Marnita's Table excels in giving people a platform to talk about social issues, turning strangers into friends. So let's see what an IZZI looks like.
It's difficult to find spaces to have tough conversations, and I think Marnita's Table offers that opportunity to us.
Right now, it's hard to even talk to people you love who have differences of opinions, and having a structure, a way to talk across all sorts of divisions is really important, and it actually works.
IZZI was way more gentle than what I expected it to be. It was fun. It was actually fun. I made friends.
I would describe it as a family reunion of people who haven't met each other yet.
Everything just came together, and it made you excited about what you were doing and how you were doing.
As you can see from the video, these events help people overcome biases in a comfortable environment, bridging the gap between race, class, and culture. Marnita's Table has held over 1,000 IZZIs, impacting nearly 50,000 people in the community. With connections to diverse communities, Marnita's Table added a research component. I will be handing the mic off to Ellen that will be talking about it.
Thanks, Doc. So, along with the community building component of IZZIs, there's also a research component. So because Marnita's Table is so effective at reaching marginalized communities, they have developed a research platform, and they actually are hired by corporations and agencies who would like to hear the voices of marginalized people. Let's take a look at the team here. These are the people we're doing this project for, some of them. Marnita's Table staff. Marnita's in the middle there. These people are researchers, they're community outreach people, they're tech people, and they're the ones who put on the ISIs. They do a bunch of work to prepare for them. They run around like crazy during the ISI, recording information. Then they collate it and they publish it in a book, and I'll give you more details about that. Now, the clients that hire Marnita's Table to put on these ISIs might be corporations who would like to have a team building activity. They might also be government agencies, public health agencies from counties, the City of St. Cloud, the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, who would like to hear the voices of people to see how effective health access is, or to see something about job access. And so during those ISIs, Marnita's Table will record people's reactions and collate it. So here's some photos from an ISI. We can see some of the structured conversations have hand raising people are counted for demographics and their responses to questions. People at tables will report what their conversation was like, and Marnita's Table staff are running around trying to write this down. There are some written components as well, some paper that people at the ISIs will write responses on. Then all of that information is taken back and collated and made into the big book of everything. We've got an example of the big book of everything here, and you can see it really is. It's a big paper book in a 3-ring binder. And this is the result of all of that information. This is then handed off to the client, and Marnita's Table keeps a copy as well. So just to recap, Marnita's Table and the client work together to develop the research program that they'll be doing at the ISI. Then Marnita's Table runs the ISI, collects all this information. They take it back, they analyze it, they compile it into this book, and then it's handed off to the client. Now, when we got this engagement, the assignment that we got, the task that they would like us to do, was to digitize the big book of everything. But how that was going to look, what the components were going to be, that was all up to us as part of our professional practice. So we started our research by doing a whole lot of interviewing. We talked to people from Marnita's Table, we talked to some of these hiring clients, and we said, what do you need from this? What is it going to look like? So we heard that it needed to be as cohesive as possible, wanted the information to hold together and be useful. That personal examples are always helpful, that they wanted some of this qualitative data that they could get from these conversations. That they wanted it to be playful and interactive, that people could maybe see the results of this after the ISI, react to it, add their stories. And then one of our clients said, well, I'm more of a numbers person, which is fine. So that we got some of the quantitative data as well, and some data visualization for that. Now, as we analyzed what we heard, we noticed 3 main opportunities: that we could simplify the production process, that we could make the document usable and shareable, and that we could find a way to gather the stories and community insights. And I've color-coded to show you how these 3 goals came out of what we heard from our constituents. So Marnita's Table could save time. They could spend their time running these ISIs and building community instead of doing a bunch of paperwork. They could promote their mission and collect the stories of these people whose stories aren't always heard. The hiring clients, these state agencies, county agencies, they wanted to be able to redistribute information in their own way so that they could use it for their programming, for whoever they needed to report it to. They wanted information that was really easy to interpret. And they also wanted this qualitative data. It's easy to get quantitative data, numbers and things like that from surveys, harder to get a hold of the people's stories. And then the community as well wants to be able to access this information. It's their information, after all, they provided it at this ISI. They want to maintain the momentum that came out of having these conversations and building this community. And then they wanted to be able to share their stories of impact after the fact. So all of these boil down to these 3 opportunities. And so to correspond with them, we came up with 3 solutions. For the production process, we would create a digital template to create the big book of everything. To make the document usable and shareable, we would digitize the big book of everything. And then to gather stories and these community insights, we would put on a follow-up campaign. So to talk about the digital template and the big book of everything, I'd like to turn it over to Kate.
Thanks, Ellen. All right, so I'm going to talk about the digital template and the digital BBE. So one of the things that we noticed when we were, okay, let me back up. So to understand more about the template, we're going to take a quick peek at where kind of things currently are with the BBE. So it's this giant book, and it's got all of this awesome information in it in different sections. And then within those sections, we found that sometimes it was hard to pinpoint exactly the answer you were looking for, and that it was kind of spread out within the section. So if the question was, what do you wish you would have learned in high school to better prepare you for the workforce, if that was the question in an ISI, we found that if you were looking at it, it was kind of spread out within the document. So our digital template, it's a simplified production process, so while the themes of each ISI are different, the general structure is the same. So the Marnita's table team can just type all of this information into this template. It'll make it easier to find and sort the information, and it's going to save them time. Maybe. Sorry. Oh, and it moves. So it's a big thing, sorry. Okay. So, oh, I think I went back one. I just realized I'm holding this upside down and that's why that was going poorly. Okay. So, without the template, it was kind of a little bit more scattered, and then with the template, it'll all be consolidated into one place. So, the digital BBE is what happens after the template's made, so it exports into this. So this document will live on the Marnita's table website and can be also sent to clients. So it's accessible for clients, it's accessible for the public. There are some portions of the BBE that have data that shouldn't be shared with everybody, so people put their names, their emails, and all of that is password protected so that only the client can access it and the public can't. So then they can still be able to look at this document, but just not all of it. This is going to save time for the Marnita's table team because they won't have to worry about putting together binders, they won't have to worry about printing out paper, they won't have to worry about all of the stuff that goes into creating it, besides the digital portion. And it's going to save time for the client. So internally, when they want to create these reports, often what happens now is they have to read it out of the book, retype it on their own. And while just being able to copy paste from a document like this might seem like a small thing, it saves people a lot of time. Also, this is going to make it way easier to share the information. So we were sure to include some data viz for people who want to see the numbers portion as well as the qualitative parts of it. So making this in a link format and having it live on the website makes it way easier to share versus lugging around a giant binder, because all this information is so cool and giving people the opportunity to view it is just amazing. So I'm going to pass it off to Roxy to talk about our follow-up campaign.
Thank you, Kate. So one thing we learned when we were speaking with the Marnita's table team is that one of the most impactful components of the ISIs are the stories that people for some examples of those, for example, a participant, a 94-year-old female, she said it was the most wonderful day of her life. She's 94 years old from a little all-white town in the middle of the prairie, and she never thought she'd live to see an experience like that. Another example is Dave Kleiss, the mayor of St. Cloud. He hired Marnita's table to host an ISI, and he was so moved by the experience that he now hosts an ISI in his own home every month because he saw the value of meeting with those people. So gathering these stories can be a little bit cumbersome because you can't always reach out to every single person individually. It's time intensive and you don't always have a way to contact them. So we proposed an email and social media campaign to reach out to these people. So email addresses that were provided on the sign-in sheet would be sent out a few days after the event and ask them to visit the Marnita's table site and share their story, share if they learned something new, how this changed their life, how they're doing things different because of what they learned. We also can do that with a Facebook message. The Marnita's table team already uses Facebook for their ISI events, so they'll create a Facebook event, they'll invite all these people, so they already have the contact information there. And I can show you how easy it would be the day after an event. They could go in with just a couple clicks, They could message everyone that went to the event. We would obviously have a long list and not just Kate here attending the event. But then they would just input the text with the link, send it off, and then they would be able to access hundreds or more of people that attended their events. Once they click that link, they'd be brought to the Marnitas Table site. Here they can import or input their story, how they were moved, what they learned, kind of how things changed for them. They can also view what other people learned. So this is kind of giving that information back to the community. They provided it, and so they have ownership of it. And this way, it's really shared, and that's kind of the community values that they're expressing. So moving forward, we believe that the template will drastically improve the processes and the time spent for the Marnitas Table team. Digitizing the Big Book of Everything would help their staff, client, and public. The staff now have a huge time save with not having to print everything, not having to get binders, not having to go through everything like that. The client now has a way to disseminate this information. They can share it with their people on their team, with people that want to meet the goals that they have set out already as well. They can also share it with policymakers or decision makers to see change in their area. The public will now have some access to it as well. They will have access to parts of the Big Book of Everything to see certain statistics and also those stories that we touched on. So again, it was a truly great experience working with the Marnitas Table team. We want to thank you for this partnership and the opportunity to learn about your organization. We recommend that everyone visit marnitastable.org, and if you ever have the opportunity to attend an ISI, we attended one and it was an incredible experience. So if there's ever one in your community, we definitely recommend to do that. We would like to thank the Prime community, all of our guests here today, our instructors, Angie and Kyer, and our amazing cohort Atwood. Again, I am Roxy Clem, Kate, Ellen Lucas, and Noctrin. Thank you.
Hello. Sometimes we're presented a problem what seems very straightforward, as in here's a paper binder, make it digital. And we like to dig a little bit deeper into the problem and really understand if we're going to invest in making something digital and our awesome software developers are going to spend time developing that. We want to make sure that it's intentional, that it's usable, and that people will find it meaningful. And again, with Marnitas Table, we see that that actionable component is something that people really find meaningful with data, that just knowing information or having access to information is kind of in the information age is no longer unique, right? So now we need to know what is it that we're supposed to do with that. So sometimes that requires going a little bit deeper into the organizational process and understanding what it is that you're doing and understanding your clients and your constituents to understand exactly what it is that we need to build. So Marnitas Table did a great job doing just that. Now we're getting into, are we having tech issues? Do I need to stall? Calmly. I can dance. I can keep going. What? I was an only child. I love the stage. There we are. So our next team is digging into a problem space that some of you may have experienced, academia, traditional academia. And it's a very interesting problem space, and I'm going to let them talk about it from here. Sound good? Give it up for Team Taina Liberation Coaching.
Hello, thank you for joining us today. We are Team Taina. This is Olivia Claviter, Torin Nelson, and I'm Kristen Hare. And we are excited to present our project to you, which is the Taina Liberation Coaching mobile app. Our client is Dr. Aida Martinez Freeman. She has a passion for helping and coaching people going through PhD programs. She is originally from Puerto Rico, and she's a first-generation college student. She earned her PhD in occupational and adult education and knows firsthand how daunting it can be to go through a PhD program, especially for underrepresented and underserved communities. Dr. Aida came up with the idea to become a coach for PhD students when she realized just how many students were getting overwhelmed and dropping out. While doing secondary research, what we found was that about 50% of students were dropping out of graduate programs. Students were also 6 times as likely to experience anxiety and depression compared to the general population. Student interviews we conducted revealed that there's a considerable amount of stigma and shame around asking for help, since the perception is that if you made it into a PhD program, you must have everything together. Another thing that we learned is that competition for fellowships and apprenticeships runs high, so students always feel like they have to be at the top of their game. Another thing we kept hearing about was the ambiguity around the research and dissertation writing process. And students feel like if they go to their advisors or peers with questions or for help, that they'll be looked down upon. While conducting interviews with current and past PhD students, what we found was an overarching theme of feelings of isolation and alone during your PhD program. Even though students are grouped into cohorts with other students that are traversing a similar path, they're generally spending most of their time alone in front of a computer and away from friends and loved ones. In addition, students reported feeling like they were abandoned by staff or felt uncomfortable going to staff with questions for fear that they would be looked down upon. Some of the quotes we got from the user interviews were things like, "You feel like you're drowning and you feel like you're the only one." And when you ask for guidance, it feels like you're needy or bugging your faculty too much. One of the things that we kept hearing from students is that universities don't really put a lot of effort into teaching you how to do research. So a lot of students were at a loss for how to even start. Other common questions were things like, "I don't know whether I should hire an editor." Even though that's a really common thing to do and a really normal thing to do, it's not openly talked about. But most prevalently, what we found was that students wonder if they're even on the right track. And they feel like they need to compare themselves to their peers and feel ashamed if their journeys don't match up exactly. The goals of Taina's coaching efforts are to demystify the dissertation writing process. And Dr. Aida emphasizes to her clients to remember that every journey looks different and that you don't need to compare yourself to everyone else or feel like your journey needs to look exactly like everyone else's. One of the things she does is she creates a dissertation plan with her clients with a strong emphasis on self-care and maintaining their health and well-being. Dr. Aida came to us with her vision for creating a mobile application that would introduce students to the concept of coaching. In addition to this, one of her visions was that it would open up opportunities for adjunct teaching staff to become coaches. Adjunct teaching positions that are non-tenured are disproportionately held by minorities and women, so this could be a great opportunity for people who are working at universities who are not working as much as others to help get them opportunities to work more as coaches. She also envisions this app having a variety of free-to-use features, such as a hub for finding editors, proofreaders, and printers. Through our research and through Dr. Aida's guidance, we realized that we needed to incorporate features into this app that would help students feel less overwhelmed and more in control of their PhD process. I'm going to turn it over to Torin now to talk about the features that we chose to include in the app and the research that we conducted to determine what students needed most out of it.
Thank you, Kristen. So with this vision cast for expanding Taina coaching into a mobile app, we began to ideate a bunch of features that this app could include. We sketched out basic wireframes of these different features, wrote descriptions for each of them, and put them into a survey to send to current and past PhD students. We wanted to see which of these features would resonate with them and be helpful or not helpful as they were going through the PhD process. So once we got those results back, we took the key features that people resonated with the most, and we put them into an interactive prototype. This prototype was then put through a usability test to see if it was easy to understand and use and fit with users' mental models. So I'm going to what this app would look like in the context of a PhD, getting a PhD, and the timeline of writing a dissertation. So to give you a little context of what this dissertation process looks like, students start by developing a proposal and a topic that they want to study for their dissertation. They then move into research and of the dissertation. These can be very 100 to then at the end, they move into defending their dissertation. So I'm going to be in the role of Renee, who is a student, and she has just started the process. She is excited to get started, but is overwhelmed. She is feeling a little overwhelmed, and she talks to one of her friends, and they highly suggest getting a dissertation coach. So she decides to sign up through the Taina app. She can easily go in and fill out the coaching questionnaire, and this asks things like what she's studying, where she is, and what her expectations are for having a coach. She would then be matched up with a coach, and this coach would help her through this entire process. Proposal development. This stage can be challenging for students because they don't exactly know how to start, and it's like a big task to take on is writing this dissertation. So one of the first things that she goes over with her coach is a dissertation plan. So once they establish what this is going to look like, that she can easily enter this into the app and check off the different tasks within each section of her dissertation writing. The hope that would be that this could be a good way to get started and to follow along the path. Next is the proposal defense and research section of the dissertation process. This can often be challenging for students because research, they aren't trained super well on how to do this, and it can be an overwhelming thing to take on. Renee knows this and has talked to her coach about it, and she really wants to stay motivated throughout. So she sets a goal for herself within the app to stay on top of what she's doing. She's able to, for example, for this one, keep up with writing 2 hours a day. So she can set that up in the app and it'll send her reminders. She likes it because she's able to feel accomplished each day that she's doing something and likes the reminder to get it done. She has now moved into the dissertation writing, and this is definitely the biggest part of this process and can be the most taxing on students. It's really when they realize that this is a marathon and not just a sprint. And so she's really starting to struggle. She's feeling really isolated and alone and at her computer all the time. She hasn't seen friends as much, and she's just starting to feel very sad. And she knows that she should talk to her coach about it. So she easily is able to go into the app and set up a meeting with her coach. This is then sent to her coach, and they can establish a meeting time. So I'm actually going to pause Renee's story and hand it over to Via to go through some of the coaching side of the app.
All right, this is going to show you guys what a coach sees when they log into the coaches portal of the app. This is Mary. She's Renee's coach. She's been an adjunct faculty member at a local university for a while, former PhD student herself, and she's decided she wants to use her experience to help others in the position she was once in. It does look like she has a message from Renee, so she's able to click on that and read the message directly within the app. She's also able to respond to Renee into the app, so it makes it really simple and quick for her. Seeing as how she's working usually with multiple clients that overlap in their timelines, it's important that she's able to be super efficient and be able to provide the support that each of these clients needs. Coaches are trained really well on how to encourage and support these clients. One of the most important aspects that we heard from Dr. Aida and also discovered through our research was that self-care is a vital part of completing an impactful dissertation. Mary is able to go into the app and take a peek at the things that Renee has entered to make sure that she's staying on track with meeting her goals. This way, if she sees that Renee is struggling at all, she's able to reach out, potentially give her a phone call, set up a meeting, as we saw right in the app, to make sure that she's giving her that encouragement. And once Mary has checked in with Renee, she's able to further touch base. Again, she can reach out if needed. Another cool feature that we have here is the calendar, so that she can look at a glance for the entire month and see meetings that she has coming up with all of her clients. That way she's able to properly prepare well enough ahead of time to make sure that they're all getting the individualized attention that they need and deserve throughout this process. Because after all, as their coach, that's what she's here for.
Okay, back to Renee. So she is in the final step of her dissertation. She is getting everything finalized. And one thing that she's starting to notice as she's writing her paper is there's some mistakes that she sees, and she is wondering if it's written in the right format, questions like that. And she talks to her coach about it, and her coach says it's totally normal to hire an editor or a proofreader to go through those things. So one of the features of the app is it allows Renee to go in to the resources section, and she is easily able to filter by editor, proofreader, transcriptionist, whatever she would need, and she can get connected to a local editor. So, Renee has finally finished her dissertation. She is feeling extremely accomplished and very happy to be done. But something that can be even more daunting than writing a dissertation is figuring out what comes next. And so the app also offers support for students as they're moving into their postdoc careers, and they can even get matched up with a career coach if that is something that they would need. So I'm going to hand it over to Bia to wrap us up.
Thanks, Torin. We hope that this app will continue to get PhD students the support that they so desperately need when going through this process. We hope that our efforts will reduce the shame and stigma around asking for help during this difficult time, and as well as alleviate some of the depression and anxiety that these students often go through. One of the dreams that we came up with while we were working on this would be that the app would allow current PhD students to become coaches eventually, so that they can provide their empathy for other students. And we see that as kind of a cycle of support and encouragement that supports not only the underserved and minorities in higher education, but really our community and our world as a whole through those efforts. We'd like to see the Taina Liberation Coaching app adopted by schools as a support tool that they could provide free of charge for their students. Again, PhD programs, but we'd also like to see it extended to master's and undergraduate programs, potentially even middle and high schoolers that may be struggling and need someone to talk to, as well as military veterans with aspirations of attending college. So now we would just really like to thank Dr. Aida for allowing us to work on this amazing project. It has been such a cool experience. We thank you so much. Our instructors, Angie and Kyer, and all of the supportive staff here at Prime. It's been a really amazing journey that you guys have been with us on. Our amazing cohort, Atwood, and all of you for being here today and listening to our project. Again, we are Team Taina, Kristen Hare, Torin Nelson, and I'm Olivia Claviter. Thank you.
So now you've seen 3 projects that span a variety of social issues, right? Dealing with data, access to resources for many special populations. And many of those problems, although the students did go back and kind of define the problem space a little bit more, understand those users a little bit more clearly, sometimes we get a problem from a client or a business partner, or a problem we see ourselves, and we aren't exactly sure what the problem is. So we need to go back even further and do sort of discovery research to understand exactly what the problem is that exists. And that one of the things we do at Prime in our program is we take what I call a medium agnostic approach to user experience. So although we live in a very digital digital world, and much of what we do is digitally mediated. Again, we are social people, and we have human-to-human interactions as well. And you've already seen with Marnita's table the understanding that there may be some sort of digital component, but even an email campaign or other components to the solution beyond one particular touch point. So we take a medium agnostic approach so that students, when they go into their careers, are equipped to tackle any problem in any technology, even technologies that don't exist yet today, and technologies that have been around forever, like paper, right? To talk us through how you tackle a problem that you don't quite know what it is, I'm going to hand it over to Team HTC.
Thank you. Hi everyone, thank you for being here today. We are Team Hennepin Technical College. And my name is Abby Anfinson, and this is Svetlana Bernstein, and we are excited to show you what we've been working on. Hennepin Technical College is an accredited educational institution that began in 1972. It offers an educational path for students in liberal arts and also highly technical skills. It is divided into 2 campuses with 60% of students at the Brooklyn Park campus and 40% at the Eden Prairie campus. When looking at HTC, some key numbers that helped guide our decisions were that 34% of the students are full-time, while 66% are part-time. The average age of an HTC student is 27, and HTC serves 8,000 students. Two key people serving these 8,000 students are Sue and Jessica, our clients for this project. When we met with them, we learned more about what was happening at HTC. Year after year, enrollment has been dropping. This year alone, enrollment fell by 5.7%. Jessica explained to us that one of the main challenges with the dropping enrollment is that students do not communicate why they left HTC. In her words, they just disappear. Which leads us to the main problem is that only 50% of the students are graduating at HTC. In our client meeting, we discussed many theories why a student might drop out of school. So we set out to learn for ourselves what's working for students and what's not. We chose this approach to gain empathy and understanding for our main clients, the students, who are also the users. It was really inspiring to meet with a group of highly engaged students to learn what they were doing at HTC and what motivated them to stay in school and earn their degree. Some key takeaways from these interviews for what led to their success is that they were involved in work study, they were generally full-time students, and most importantly, they were informed about HTC resources. Which led us to infer what this disappearing student might think. They're probably uninformed about the HTC resources, and they're probably not involved in campus activities. When we looked around the school to find out how the students can be informed, we found written and printed announcements throughout. We saw high-quality advisors who were there to help students when they had questions, and we saw that they had great web-based applications for students to use. So it was clear that the resources for full-time students were on campus and they were available for them. So then it left us with this question of how can HTC reach the part-time students who are off campus? And then what we found is that HTC does not have a mobile-friendly application for students to use. And when you think about the mobile, 90%, 97% of students have them. So it's a great tool that HTC can tap into for really keeping all students, whether they're on campus or not, informed. So with that, I'll pass it off to Svetlana to discuss some of our solutions for this problem.
Thank you, Abby. So to increase the graduation rates and improve the campus support at HTC, we decided to create a solution that would digitally centralize the resources and result in a more engaged student body. With our four-step strategic guide, students will feel informed and connected and able to graduate from HTC. First and foremost, updating the digital experience for students will improve will equip the staff and students. Currently, the students are using web-based applications that are used with websites that aren't currently talking to each other. They're not connected. So we propose a solution to implement a mobile application to keep students more informed and be able to easily access resources. The next step, the second step is in our engagement strategy is to foster a strong community within the HTC network. Currently, the HTC campus doesn't have a strong alumni network, so we saw that as an opportunity to create workshops, invite speakers and alumni to join in and be a part of the community. The third step in our engagement strategy is to create a welcoming environment. From our interviews, many of the students mentioned that they would like to have better quality food and more welcoming atmosphere. Just simple things like warm lighting and a more comfortable environment for people to gather and spend their time at, to host workshops and events eventually in the cafeteria area will improve the engagement and create a central space for students to interact. The fourth step in our engagement strategy is prevention through feedback. Currently the staff don't have a lot of information about the students they are serving, and creating a digital platform for students to easily be able to submit feedback and let staff know what's going on will allow the staff to gain insights about the students and be able to identify students that are struggling more easily. So here I introduce to you the HTC mobile app, which will keep students informed and provide accessibility. We included the students in our design process through a card sorting activity, and this activity helped us identify the most desirable features to the students, such as the D2L assignment portal, student resources, and e-services class registration. And then I will take you through a short demo of the prototype of this app. So both students and staff can log into this app and be able to check the registration or assignment portal. They can see what's going on in the events section, as well as check in with the alumni network. And these are some of the resources that HTC offers. They can also submit feedback, and for a future state of this application, we'd like to include features like Google Docs or an academic calendar, for example. And
Thank you, Svetlana. So really excited to introduce this app as a starting point for enabling a communication and engagement tool for all the students at HTC. And hopefully it'll get them to stay informed and connected no matter where they are, so they can really utilize everything HTC has to offer. So thank you for listening. Again, we are Abby and Svetlana. We would like to thank our instructors, Kyra and Angie, as well as our whole cohort, and we'd like to thank Jessica and Sue for the amazing work they're doing at HTC. Thank you.
We like to clap at Prime. Can everybody give it up one more time for all these amazing projects? Great job, everyone. So that concludes our presentations for today. Immediately following this, we have a few things going on. Their work's not done. They now have an afternoon of interviews with local hiring agencies and employers. So their afternoon is busy, which means we have to convert this space to an interviewing space. So if you are a primer and you know what that means, then you should help. And if you are not, you should go find a friend and talk over there, or eat the pizza, or take a tour, or find your person that invited you and say hi, that sort of thing. But we got to clear this space. So thank you all for being here. Have a great afternoon.